Hey everyone, Mike here from Binyao Outdoors. Welcome to the second tournament of the year. I'm super excited. The tournament is actually this coming weekend. I'm on a lunch break and I wanted to record this intro for you. This is going to be different than my last entry into this series. So the first video I entered in, I actually did one big long video where I did all my preparation and then I did my fishing. From now on, we're going to be doing this as two parts. So this video right here is the preparation. I'm going to talk to you about map study. I'm going to show you the weather patterns. I'm going to show you what baits I'm selecting, what leaders and why I'm rigging my poles the way I'm doing that. Everything that goes into all the information that I've gathered is going to be presented to you in this episode. If that's not what you're looking for, if you're more interested in just seeing the raw action, watching me get out on the water, that will be tomorrow night's video where I'm going to release that, showing you the event, showing you where I ended up placing the decisions on the water, all of that. So we're going to split these things up. That way I can do a little bit more detail, make them not so long of one big video, but two kind of medium-sized videos. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about map study because I can't really pick baits until I know what type of water we're looking at. So we're going to go inside, we're going to check out the depth chart, we're going to look at Google Earth, and we're going to see how this body of water makes out.
Okay, so here we go again, guys. You'll notice that I got a little bit of a different screen than I usually have. I actually downloaded the real Google Earth because I wanted to see what differences it made. The first thing is I was able to change the timeline. So that's a little bit significant because I'm able to get it closer to the month that I'm going to be fishing. Now, this is still 4 years old, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different buildings. There could be different things along the shoreline, probably some structure and other things that are going to be not available for the view. But overall, it's going to be the closest representation to what we have. This right here is the boat ramp. So this is where we're going to be launching from. This tournament's a little bit different than the last tournament because of the fact that all 18 or 19 people will be fishing out of this one location. In the last event, we had multiple bodies of water that we could pick from. In this particular event, we're actually going to be fishing all at the same place. Looking at the way this body of water makes out, just kind of doing a quick lap around the shoreline, what I'm seeing is some overhanging trees. Like zoom in a little bit here. You can kind of see they're hanging over the water a little bit. Again, this is old footage, so this may have been cleaned out. Along here, we have a roadbed. This is something that I'm definitely going to take some time to fish. Bass like to hang around the riprap and all of the gravel and everything that is put underneath the edge of the road to keep the road stable. And that actually also creates an insulating factor. So, for those of you who don't know, rock sticking out of the water will gain heat from the sun, which will then in turn heat the water around it. So, the water in this area might be a little bit warmer than it is on the rest of the body of the water. The other thing to keep in mind is that I did a little bit of research ahead of time, and what I determined is that the wind is going to be blowing roughly this direction. Now, that could change because I did my research a little bit early, but ultimately it's going to be coming from this side and it's going to be working its way towards this little bay right here. This bay right here is going to be the main focus of the beginning of my tournament. I'm going to work this area first because the wind's going to be blowing the bait that way. This is actually the northern section of the body of water, so it's also going to be the warmest. It's going to be where the sun hits first, it's going to be what warms up first, and it's going to be the area that I'm going to start targeting. After I figure out if there's a pattern here or not, I'm then going to work my way down this shoreline. And I'm going to continue. Unlike the last tournament, I did not continue down the shoreline, but I am going to work my way into this area right here. This area right here looks pretty promising. I don't know how deep it is around this island right here, but it does look like another area that could be a spawning flat. It looks like it's probably fairly shallow down here. Um, there is some docks along the shoreline, but I'm not paying too much attention to the docks. If you remember my last video, I talked about docks a lot, but I didn't take into account the time of year it is. A lot of these are probably not in, so I'm going to assume that they're not in, and if they are there, then I'll just take advantage when I get there. Overall, this place is very nondescript. There's not a lot to look at. There's not a lot of detail that I can really gather. The only other thing I can really say using this view is this stuff right here. You're kind of seeing through the water. So you see this like green area. This is submergent grass. And in July, it doesn't surprise me that there's grass that high. But through some other research that I've done, I also found out that this place has some weird grass lines that make the areas that you would think are fishable not very fishable, that the edges of the grass lines are in weird places, and that there are some spots that you would not expect to have grass lines. Like I can kind of see, for an example, right here, this is pretty far offshore, and there's a pretty big patch of grass there. I'm gonna guess it's probably lily pads, but again, it's early in the season, so some of this stuff might not be here. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna change views and we're gonna go to the depth chart to see what we're looking at for depths. Okay, so back to the map now. We're gonna zoom way in and we're gonna look at the boat ramp, which is right here. And what I'm seeing right off is what I kind of expected. You start with a 5 foot shoreline, anything, probably my guess based on the way these lines are, it's hard to tell distance, but ultimately I'm willing to bet you there's probably 20, 30 yards of shoreline where this is 2 feet, 1 foot, and then it dips into 5 feet. Looking around at the edges here, you've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So it kind of drops pretty much at an even pace all the way around this northern portion of the lake. So if there's not a lot of guys that are loading up on this very northernmost tip of the body of water, I probably will start right around here because I can straddle that 10-foot stuff, cast into the 20 foot, but also cast into the shallows and work my way around this shoreline. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this northern section though, because I really do want to work my way down into this area. This looks like a classic spawn flat. So you have shallow water on the very edge. You have deeper water access. So you got this little 30-foot area right here that literally ramps right up into the shoreline, and this is the exact area roughly where the bait is going to be blown to because the current is going to be pushing that way. Now, granted, again, the winds could change, but this is another area that I need to focus on because of the way it's laid out. There's a pretty decent 5 to 10 foot little area that I'm going to be able to cruise down through this little gap. So between this 5 and this 10, I'm going to be able to cruise right down through there, and I'll be able to fish most of this deeper and shallower water without having to really deviate or zigzag much to find different depths to try to locate where those fish are suspending, where they're if they're up on shore, if they're up shallow, or if they're in the deeper water. So this area right here, I'm probably going to spend quite a bit of time. Looking around the shoreline, it's pretty much the same story. Now, down here on the southern end, this looks like it's shallower for sure on the southernmost end. There's 5 foot, 10 foot, 20 foot, and then there's 30 all through the middle. I will probably not be messing with this 30-foot stuff, and the main reason for that is because I am not good at deep fishing. I'm not going to be patient enough to drop shot or pick this apart. And it is a largemouth lake. There is no smallmouth in here. So it's just going to be a harder body of water to fish deep. I do have a deep diver tied on. I do have some other baits with me. If I absolutely have to, I will switch up and drag a jig or do something deep. But I'm going to avoid it as much as I can. So I'm going to do a lap around the bottom. I'm probably going to hang out along this area right here, but this section right here, I'm probably just going to cruise down through and kind of just power fish and see if I can pick up any rogue fish. So looking, the shoreline is pretty much like I said, it's nondescript. I won't be getting too far into the middle because there's just too much deep water. With 18 guys fishing, unfortunately, I do think that there's going to be a merry-go-round thing going on where guys are just going to be kind of cruising around the edges. So if I find fish, I'm going to have to stay on them. I'm going to have to get 5 fish and go. The other thing about this body of water, from the research I've done, from some information that I've gathered, just looking up different things online, this is not a premier bass fishery. This is a place that's predominantly fished for trout. So I think honestly a 5 fish limit is going to go a long ways to finishing in a top 10. The length isn't even going to matter as much as just getting 5 fish in the boat. What that means is I've got to hit high percentage areas and hit as many of them as I can and just try to pick up a few rogue fish. If I can get 5, I think I'm going to stand a chance to place in the money. And as promised, I want to talk about the weather. So this is the window of time that we're going to be fishing the tournament. So as you can tell, there's not going to be a significant weather event. It is saying that there's a chance of rain, but I just don't see that happening. It's possible. I just don't see it happening. The other thing that it's saying is 10 to 15 mile an hour winds, so I'm guessing it's going to be small amounts of wind with some gusts at times. So it looks like the wind is going to be increasing progressively throughout the tournament, and at the end is when it's going to be at the highest. I've also noticed that the pressure is pretty steady. Originally, when I looked at this the last time, it was actually a lot different. It was dropping, but now it seems like it's kind of holding true, which is good and bad because that 30 is technically in the high pressure. I would rather it be more around 29. But this partly cloudy, I'm hoping it's mostly cloudy. I'm hoping this is wrong. But again, you never really know with the weather. And as I'm recording this, there's a couple more days until I'm actually fishing. So I'll have to adjust to the weather on the day of, like I always do. But I always like to look at this because it will tell me a little bit. So, like I said, the northwest wind. So that means the wind's going to be coming out of the northwest. It was west northwest before, so it looks like it is shifting around, but ultimately it's going to be coming out of the northwest and blowing back towards the bottom of the body of water. So it's still going to be blowing towards that bay just a little bit further down than I originally anticipated. We're going to keep an eye on that and see if that changes throughout the rest of the week, and I'll adjust maybe which direction I do my lap around if that completely flips. But ultimately, this is nothing spectacular. There's nothing fancy other than the fact that it's going to be 70 degrees by the end of the tournament, and I probably will be sweating. But other than that, there's not much really to look at here. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to explain what this kindergarten drawing looks like and why it's what's going on. But ultimately, the red lines are where I'm going to just continuously move and try to locate fish. This is not something where I'm going to stop and fish and pick apart. It's where I'm going to be in transit from one spot to another. Now, if I find something significant, I'm going to work it, but it's got to be perfect. It's got to be a big rock pile, a submerged tree that's going to have fish on it. It's got to be something so good that I'm going to stop and take time to fish it. There's not supposed to be a heavy amount of wind, and that's going to be something that's going to hurt because the fish aren't going to be on the move. They're going to be a little bit more docile. So I'm going to have to go to them. So the first thing I'm going to do is launch, and I'm going to head up to the northern part. Now I may stay up in the northern part because within 15 minutes it's probably going to take me that long to at least get up there. If there is people that are picking that apart, if there's a lot of anglers that are crammed up in that northern basin right there, I'm going to work my way over where you see the gap between the word here and focus area. I'm going to kind of set up somewhere, find something, and just stay there until lines in. Once I get to lines in, I'm going to just move my way, casting shallow, casting deep, working all of those baits. I talked about those baits in my intro, but what we're going to do is we're going to run the deeper diving baits. We're going to cast those into the middle, work them back towards the shallows. I'm going to work that swim bait. I'm going to work that swim jig, the chatter bait. I'm going to be casting those into the shallows and paralleling the bank. And I'm just going to keep moving till I get to this first little circle, this focus area. Now in this focus area, what I'm going to do, and I'll change it to, we'll just do pink because it's going to stand out. We're going to kind of zigzag. We're going to do this through this area. We're going to see if we can locate anything in any depth. By doing that, I'm literally covering everything from like 5 to 25 feet. Once I figure out a pattern, if I pick up any fish, I'm going to continue to work that pattern. I'm going to lock that bait up for the day because I do think that this tournament is going to be whoever gets to 5 fish first is going to have the chance to win. If I do not find any fish in this area, if I'm not finding what I want, I'm not getting what I need, or if I happen to get 5 and I'm still catching, but I'm not upsizing, I'm then going to continue. I'm going to work my way down the shoreline, doing the same move again. Cast deep, cast shallow, and we're just going to keep working our way along. If there's any structure, any type of dock pilings or anything left over from the docks not being in, I'm going to work those, and then we're going to get down to the focus area at the bottom. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of zigzag through, and we're going to work this area. Now, what I didn't draw on this map is I may check out this area right here, but this area looks stupid shallow, and I don't know if I want to get in there. If it's super, super shallow, if it's 1 or 2 feet, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to continue and work my way up the shoreline right here. I'm going to kind of follow my way back up to the top. Now, if I get all the way back to the ramp and I have not found anything, I'm still struggling to find fish, I'm just going to work my way back around. I'm just going to do another lap.
Okay, so we've gone over maps, we've gone over weather, we've gone over bait selection. My plan is going to be to work that shoreline, hover over, kind of straddle those different depths, try to locate a pattern, try to put the puzzle together, try to get fish on the board as quickly as possible. My goal is really to get a limit as quickly as I can. That last tournament, what I did was not that. I actually screwed up and I tried to leave fish to find bigger fish instead of just getting 5 and then worrying about upsizing later. So this time around, I am not going to leave fish to find fish unless I'm not getting a full limit and not upsizing. At that point, then I'll make that decision. But ultimately, if I catch a fish, I figure out the pattern, I figure out where they are, I'm not going to go wandering around like I did last time. So that is going to be the biggest key for me, is making sure to get those 5 fish on the board and then pivot to trying to upsize from there. Now, this tournament, just to give you an idea of the timeline, I am going to be getting up at 2 a.m. I'm going to be leaving my house, driving 2.5+ hours down to the boat ramp. Have to set up. We launch at 5:45. We're able to start fishing at 6 o'clock. And I am going to lock into that first spot that I showed you on the map. I'm going to set up there. I'm going to have everything ready to go. And we're going to work our way through this tournament and see what we can figure out. As I'm fishing, for those of you who are watching this video who maybe didn't see my previous video, I'm going to try to do better. Honestly, I didn't do a great job about explaining my thoughts. I'm going to kind of tell you guys what I'm thinking throughout the whole tournament. I'm going to explain, this is what I'm doing. I've decided to change patterns because of this. Everything is going to be broke down for you so that hopefully you can feel like you're riding along with me in the kayak, participating in this tournament with me. That's kind of my goal with this series, is that I want a fan base. I want you guys cheering me on, even though you're seeing it after the fact. Ultimately, I feel like if you're able to watch it, maybe you'll get some ideas for your tournaments. It'll help you with maybe your fun fishing, and overall, it's just fun for me to make. So again, like I said, the official tournament video is going to hit tomorrow night, the same time that this video hit, we're going to release that video and you're going to see the results of all of this planning that you just watched. I want to thank you guys for coming along with me. I really appreciate everyone who's taken time to watch my videos, everyone who's taken a second to watch, listen, comment, and everything. Everybody has been so supportive of this channel, and I want to extend that thank you to you. If you haven't already, hit that like, hit that subscribe. It really helps me out, gets my videos out to more people, and it just really, really means a lot to me personally. Again, I want to thank you for coming along with me, and as always, let's get out there, catch more fish.